Hello. Today we are going to talk about Auguste Comte, father of positivism. Positivism is a trend in bourgeois philosophy which declares natural sciences to be the sole source of true knowledge. It also rejects the cognitive value of philosophical study. Positivism emerged in response to the inability of speculative philosophy, in particular the German idealism. Because German idealism does not have the ability to solve philosophical problems which had arisen as a result of scientific development. Positivists went to an opposite extreme and rejected theoretical speculation as a means of obtaining knowledge. Positivism declared false and senseless all problems, concepts, and propositions of traditional philosophy on being, substances, causes, etc., that could not be solved or verified by experience due to a high degree of abstract nature. Positivism claims to be a fundamentally new, non-metaphysical philosophy modeled on empirical sciences and providing them with a methodology. Positivism, therefore, is essentially empiricism brought to extreme logical conclusions in certain respects. Inasmuch as any knowledge is empirical knowledge in one form or another, no speculation can be knowledge. Positivism has not escaped the lot of traditional philosophy, since its own propositions turned out to be unverifiable by experience and consequently metaphysical. Positivism was founded by Auguste Comte, who introduced the term positivism. Historically, there are three stages in the development of positivism. The exponents of the first stage were Comte, Littré, and Lafitte in France, John Stuart Mill, and Herbert Spencer in England. Alongside the problems of the theory of knowledge and logic, the main place in the first stage of positivism was assigned to sociology. For example, Comte had the idea of transforming society on the basis of science. Spencer developed the organic theory of society. The rise of the second stage in positivism, known as empirico-criticism, dates back to the 1870s to 1890s and is associated with Ernst Mach and Avenarius, who renounced even formal recognition of objective real objects, which was a feature of early positivism. In the ideas of Mach, the problems of cognition were interpreted from the viewpoint of extreme psychologism, which was merging with subjectivism. The rise and the formation of the third stage of positivism, also known as neo-positivism, is linked up with the activity of the Vienna Circle. We have thinkers like Neurath, Carnap, Schlick, Frank, and others, and of the Berlin Society for Scientific Research, Reichenbach and others, which combined a number of trends. These trends include logical atomism, logical positivism, semantics, and also the pragmatism of William James. The main place in the third stage of positivism is taken by the philosophical problems of language and symbolic logic, the structure of scientific investigations, and others. Having renounced psychologism, the exponents of the third stage of positivism took the course of reconciling the logic of science with mathematics, the course of formalization of epistemological problems. Let us now briefly look at the life and works of Auguste Comte. Comte's father, Louis Comte, a tax official, and his mother, Rosalie Boyer, were strongly royalist and Roman Catholic. They were at odds with the republicanism and skepticism that swept through France in the aftermath of French Revolution. Comte rejected Roman Catholicism and royalism alike at an early age. He was intellectually precocious and in 1814 entered the prestigious École Polytechnique and soon took up permanent residence in Paris, earning a precarious living there by the occasional teaching of mathematics and journalism. Comte's most important acquaintance in Paris was Henri de Saint-Simon, one of the founders of Socialism and one of the first to see the importance of economic organization in the modern society. In 1826, Comte began a series of lectures on a system of positive philosophy for a private audience, but he soon suffered a serious nervous breakdown. He made an almost complete recovery from his symptoms the following year, and in 1829 he again took up his projected lecture series. The following 12 years were devoted to his publication of his philosophy in Course of Positive Philosophy. Comte devoted his later years to composing his other major work titled The System of Positive Polity, published between 1851 and 1854, in which he completed the formulation of sociology. His other writings include Catechisme Positiviste, which is rendered in English as the Catechism of Positive Religion, and Synthesis Subjective, in English titled as Subjective Synthesis. Many English intellectuals, including John Stuart Mill, were influenced by him, and they translated and promulgated his work. Comte died of cancer in the year 1857. Let us briefly look at some of the key ideas of Comte's positivism. To begin with, let us spend a few moments in trying to understand his idea of the three stages of intellectual development. Comte's law of the three stages maintained that human intellectual development had moved historically from a theological stage in which the world and human destiny within it were explained in terms of gods and spirits, through a transitional metaphysical stage in which explanations were in terms of essences, final causes, and other abstractions, and finally it moved to the positive stage, which is the last stage. This last stage was distinguished by an awareness of the limitations of human knowledge. Knowledge could only be relative to the nature of human person as a species and to his or her varying social and historical situations. Absolute explanations were therefore abandoned for the more sensible discovery of laws based on the observable relations between phenomena. Now let us focus on his idea of science. Comte classifies science into 5 types. This classification of the sciences was based upon the hypothesis that the sciences had developed from the understanding of simple and abstract principles to the understanding of complex and concrete phenomena. Hence, the sciences developed as follows: from mathematics, astronomy, physics, chemistry to biology, and finally to sociology. According to Comte, this last discipline not only concluded the series, but would also reduce social facts to laws and synthesize the whole of human knowledge, thus rendering the discipline equipped to guide the reconstruction of society. Though Comte did not originate the concept of sociology or its area of study, he greatly extended and elaborated the field and systematized its content. Comte divided sociology into two main fields or branches: social statics, or the study of the forces that hold society together, and social dynamics, or the study of the causes of social change. He held that the underlying principles of society are individual egoism, which is encouraged by the division of labor and the combination of efforts and the maintenance of social cohesion by means of the government and the state. Now let us try and understand the meaning of religion according to Comte. While the different forms of deism preserve the idea of God and dissolve religion into a vague religiosity, Comte proposes exactly the contrary: a religion with neither God nor the supernatural. He defines religion as follows, I quote, "The state of complete harmony peculiar to human life, when all the parts of life are ordered in their natural relations to each other." End quote. He also defines religion as a consensus, analogous to what health is for the body. Religion has two functions according to the point of view from which one considers existence. In its moral function, religion should govern each individual. In its political function, it should unite all individuals. Religion also has three components, corresponding to the threefold division of the cerebral table: doctrine, worship, and moral rule, also known as discipline. Comte's discussion is mainly about the first two, namely doctrine and worship. If one considers the first to be related to faith and the second to love, their relation takes two forms. I quote, "Love comes first and leads us to faith, so long as the growth is spontaneous. But when it becomes systematic, then the belief is constructed in order to regulate the action of love." End quote. At first, Comte had followed the traditional order and presented doctrine before worship. But he soon gave priority to worship and saw this change as a considerable step forward. In the positivist religion, worship, doctrine, and moral rule all have the same object, namely humanity, which must be loved, known, and served. Already the general conclusions of the course compared the concept of humanity to that of God, affirming the moral superiority of humanity. But only in 1847 does Comte make the substitution explicit. Sociological synthesis comes to replace theological synthesis. Membership of humanity is sociological, not biological. In order to belong to what is defined as the continuous whole of convergent beings, Comte's term for human beings who tend to agree, one has to be worthy of it. all producers of dung are excluded. Conversely, animals that have rendered important services can be included. Strictly speaking, it is to sociology that one should turn for knowledge of the laws of the human order. But as the final science recapitulates all others, it is the whole encyclopedic scale that constitutes the doctrine of the new religion, which thereby becomes demonstrated and is no longer revealed or inspired. Let us try to sum up the ideas of Comte now. After his death, Comte's influence depended more on dissident followers than on orthodox positivists such as Pierre Lafitte in France and Richard Congreve and Frederick Harrison in England. On the whole, the system was not well received. Almost immediately, Mill and Littré put forward the idea that there were a good Comte, the author of the course, and a bad Comte, the author of the system. However, it is impossible to confine oneself merely to the course. The early works had made a strong impression on some of the best minds of the time. They remain required reading for everyone wishing to understand positive philosophy, as they are still among the best introductions to the subject. In the course, beginning with the very title, one finds the two themes that he planned to think through in their relation to one another: science and society. The foremost question is a political one. How should society be reorganized? Science, although present from the beginning, plays a secondary role as the means to achieve the chosen goal. All of Comte's work aims at the foundation of a discipline in which the study of society will finally become positive and scientific. His area of sociology is not quite the one we are used to today, but the current meaning of the term positivism, according to which it is merely a philosophy of science, is even more misleading as a clue to Comte's thought. Even though the founder of positivism is rightly considered to be one of the great philosophers of science, along with Poincaré and Carnap, his natural place is elsewhere, along with sociologists such as his contemporaries Marx and Tocqueville. Only when the question arises of what distinguishes Comte from the latter does science enter into the picture. Thank you.